Now, the largest exhibition of protest art by Russian artists has gone on show in Amsterdam. Artists Against the Kremlin raises a voice against the Russian government's propaganda and repression, and it's the sort of expression that's no longer tolerated in the artist's home country.
This portrait of Vladimir Putin is a work of protest against his rule in Russia. It's on display in an anti-Kremlin exhibition featuring dozens of Russian dissident artists. The theme is virus.
It is about reinforced loop of corruption that Putin is aware of, but he's immune. This is like a system that keeps everybody oppressed.
Artists Against the Kremlin is being hosted in Amsterdam's renowned Center for Art and Public Debate, De Bali. It is a safe space for Russian artists to criticize the Kremlin's imperialism, repression, and authoritarianism, which the artists say is a virus that is spreading.
Many countries that was known to be pro-democratic are now uses those practices of repressions, like Georgia, for instance, where I stayed and lived for the first 6 months of my forced exile. When we came there, it was full support of Ukrainians. Right now, it's completely vice versa. It's like super pro-Russian government. This looks like a disease and like kind of a virus. How Kremlin technologies of propaganda, of repressions, of torture become global.
Since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the number of artists imprisoned in Russia has grown. Rights groups say Russian secret services have been monitoring artists, forcing many to flee. Those still inside the country work underground, risking arrest for criticizing the war and the authorities. Some of the art on display here is from those artists inside Russia, and some from Ukrainian artists in regions under Russian bombardment.
This one, I think, is something you built for a sniper.
In Russia, repression has reached new extremes, pushing many into exile.
The screen was quite an important component of the project because there is always a system beneath just the surface. This can actually be quite an interesting metaphor for the Kremlin and the propaganda and the regime itself.
Through this exhibition, Russian artists want to send the message that the Kremlin is waging a hybrid war and fueling instability through propaganda and disinformation.
Well, that report from correspondent Christine Mundwa, who joins us now from Brussels. Welcome, Christine. We heard the curator of the exhibition saying many countries that were known to be pro-democratic now use practices of repression. Why does he say that?
Well, Vladimir Shelemov is really talking about what he's experienced when he went into exile in Georgia. This was shortly after the invasion of Ukraine. And witnessing the change that happened in Georgian society, where you now effectively have a pro-Russian government that is oppressing dissent. We saw recently in headlines the protests and how the authorities crack down on these protests. And still today, it might not be in the news all the time, but there is the purging of anti-government voices, of voices that are critical to the direction that the new government is taking. And he then also points to, for instance, Germany, where he now lives, where you now have a far-right party that has ties to Russia and is pro-Russia, that's also growing remarkably. So he's witnessing changes in Western societies that he felt, wow, this is alarming, and what he describes as a virus that is in Russia is now spreading outside of Russia's borders. For example, there is a study that was done by the University of Leipzig saying that, many people in Eastern Germany are embracing the idea or longing for authoritarianism. They feel that it provides more stability rather than open societies. So you are starting to see a lot of this sentiment in Western societies. And I recall not just about the same time last year, I was reporting in Nigeria where suddenly Russian flags were appearing at anti-government protests. So this propaganda and the Kremlin methods of disinformation, how they're seeping into societies, Western and otherwise, and the impact that is having on populations. And that is essentially what this exhibition seeks to conscientize people, to make people aware of the changes that are happening in societies because of that Russian influence.
And so the flip side of that, of course, do the artists believe, therefore, that democracy itself is at stake?
They absolutely do. And they're taking part in this exhibition of critical art, something that they're not able to do in their own home countries, right? The artists that you saw in that footage, they're all dissident artists, people who some of them can hardly go back to Russia now, are separated from their families because they are critical of the Kremlin. Anyone in the art world would know no artist likes a very explicit title like Artists Against the Kremlin for an exhibition, right? It should be something a little bit more vague and thought-provoking and not so direct. But, you know, these artists, being Russians, had to make it very clear to audiences that the Debali, the organizers of this event, wanted to make sure that people knew exactly what their position was. But that is it. The point they're making is to say we're not able to do this in our own country, and that is because Russia is not a democracy. And so, you know, just to make people aware of the impact that this has on lives when you don't live in a democratic society, when you close societies, and when you clamp down on activism of the sort.
Thanks, Christine. DW Brussels correspondent Christine Mundwa.